buying your first home, it's an exciting time. But what is the journey ahead? What are the steps you take? I'm going to get into that. Really general advice here, but it will give you an idea of timelines and what kind of things to expect, what kind of things to aim for. But initially, the first thing that you probably want to aim for is what we call a pre-assessment letter or pre-approval letter, and that is a formal indication given to you by the bank or mortgage advisor that, yep, you can go up to this amount. So this will help you set your budget, right? And it's also an important time to look at different interest rates and different repayments, just so you know what you're getting into. Now, from when you make initial contact with someone like us as your mortgage advisor to getting a pre-approval or getting a pre-assessment done, generally this can take 1 week to a couple of weeks, depending on how complicated things are or how busy banks are, right? So 1 to 2 weeks is what this takes. Now, after that, of course, you start the house hunting. Now, some people do it the other way around. They look for a house first and then the pre-approval. But after that, you start the search. Now, this can take anywhere. We have clients that can, it can take a couple of weeks to quite a few months for this journey. But when you do find the right house, of course, you will be presented with an offer that you can make, a legally binding contract. So it's always a good idea to understand what you're getting into. Ideally, check with a lawyer first before you sign anything. But if you are going to an auction, of course, if you win, then you are deemed unconditional, right? But if you're getting a contract, if you're buying by negotiation, you'll be able to put some conditions in there and do your checks, your homework. Generally, you allow for like 7 working days, 10 working days, depending on what kind of checks you need to do. But here you will check things like the structure. So that's your building inspector, and then also the limb report or the land that the house sits on. And if you have a lower deposit, what's deemed a low deposit at the time by the banks, then you may also check the value as well of the house, right? So you may do a valuation. Now, this can take 7 to 10 days. If everyone's all go, the banks obviously previously indicated they're happy with you, and during this process they indicate that they're happy with the house as well, you're happy with it, your advisors are happy with it, then you go ahead and it becomes unconditional, right? So from here, generally is when, during this time here, after it becomes unconditional, is when we basically start doing a deep dive in terms of your interest rates, the structure of your loan. We teach you about how the home loan products work. We have time up until the moving in day, which is here. And generally, most properties, you have a month from going unconditional to moving in day. So we want to get onto this early on after that. Now, we leave this stage till this point in time because this is only the real only real opportunity. You have to be able to lock in interest rates. Before this, any rate quotes don't last long, and plus you really know what your budget is, and your timelines are set in concrete so that you can afford to make a commitment on interest rates at this point. So, moving in day, settlement day, right? This is where, on the one day where you get the keys to the house, the title goes into your name, the mortgage and the money and everything changes hands. On this day, which is called the settlement day, possession date, different names for it, but basically your lawyer represents you on this day, communicates with the seller's lawyer usually, and they interact and do all of this on the one day. There's a lot of prep that we and the banks and everyone else does kind of beforehand. Couple of days usually before this day, you will get an opportunity to do what's called a pre-inspection. So you'll get to have a nosy around to make sure that the house is still standing and stuff like that before you take possession of the home. So those are the different steps involved. Just to give you a brief, just a very general rundown of the people involved at different times. Let's say that this is a lawyer. Now, most people will involve the lawyer at this stage when they're signing a contract, right? But they, of course, do get involved in here as well when you're doing checks on the title. And of course, a lawyer is very important when you're taking possession. A building inspector, of course, can check a house out before you go unconditional. So in case of an auction, of course, they need to do this before you bid. right? If you want it checked out like that. Now, in terms of let's say this is a mortgage advisor, we kind of really interact with you here, but nice mortgage advisors like ourselves, we kind of hold your hand through this whole journey and beyond as well, actually. We do work with the banks, so the banks really get more active and involved, of course, getting you the pre-approval letter here, right? So we interact with the bank to get you the pre-approval letter. We interact with the banks to make sure that they get the home loan documents to your lawyer, which is basically the formal documents that would stipulate the interest rate and the mortgage and what it really all means. So we interact with the banks to make sure that the bank will get the loan documents there in time, of course, before you settle the home loan. So hopefully, look, that's kind of a very brief rundown. Hopefully that kind of gives you a sense of where you're at and what's coming up. But thank you for watching. Hamish from mortgagesonline.co.nz.